I moved into a quiet neighborhood on the edge of a small Ohio town last October. Most of the houses were one-story ranch homes with patchy lawns and wind-torn Halloween decorations. It felt like a good place to reset after a breakup and a bad year. The first night I noticed the house next door, number 17, had its curtains drawn even during the day. Every other house had pumpkins, fake cobwebs, or kids' drawings in the windows, but 17 looked dead. When I met a few neighbors, they lowered their voices when I mentioned that address. One woman, Mrs. Caldwell, said, "The man there keeps to himself. Works nights, I think." For the first week, I only caught glimpses, a silhouette behind the curtain, a porch light flicking on at odd hours. Then small things started happening. My trash can was moved. Footprints appeared in the wet grass behind my fence, too large to be mine. I told myself it was nothing. But on October 13th, I woke to the sound of scraping metal outside. Through my bedroom blinds, I saw someone standing between my house and 17, dragging something long and narrow across the ground. The figure moved slowly, steady, like they didn't care if anyone saw. The next morning I checked. The grass was torn up. A thin groove ran from my fence to his yard. Whatever he dragged left a rusty streak behind. That evening I walked to his door. The porch smelled faintly of bleach. I knocked once, twice. A voice answered, calm, polite, but wrong. "Don't come back here after dark," he said. The door closed before I could speak. From then on, every night around 2 a.m., a light flicked on in his basement. Sometimes it stayed on until sunrise. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling that I was being watched grew heavier. On October 21st, my power went out during a storm. I grabbed a flashlight and checked the breaker outside. The cover was open, the switches flipped. When I turned around, the light from House 17's basement window was aimed directly at me, as if he knew I'd step outside. The following day, I called the police. They sent a patrol car, but when the officer returned, he said the man was cooperative. "Name's Howard, former maintenance worker. Keeps to himself, yeah, but he's fine." I didn't feel fine. A few nights later, I heard tapping on my back door. Not knocking, tapping, like fingernails on glass. When I shined the flashlight, nothing was there. But in the morning, I found muddy fingerprints, high up on the glass panel, higher than I could reach. That night, I set my phone to record video facing the door while I slept. Around 3:12 a.m., the motion sensor caught something, a face, half hidden by the door frame, staring into the camera. Pale, expressionless, eyes wide open. It stayed there for nearly a minute before backing away. I went straight to the police station with the footage. They said they'd check it out. I never heard back. On October 29th, 2 nights before Halloween, the entire neighborhood lost power again. I lit a candle and looked through the blinds. House 17's basement light was still on. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over in the rain and pounded on his door. "Howard!" I shouted. "Whatever you're doing, stop!" No answer. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open. The smell of bleach hit me harder than before, mixed with something metallic. The living room was empty except for rows of stacked boxes labeled utility. All around were photographs taped to the walls, pictures of the houses on our street, every porch, every backyard. My house appeared again and again, each photo slightly closer, until the last one was a close-up of my bedroom window. I heard a sound from below, footsteps on concrete. I followed, flashlight trembling. The basement was larger than I expected, lined with shelves holding jars filled with something cloudy. At the far end was a folding chair and a single camera tripod facing an empty wall. And on that wall, painted in thick red strokes, were the numbers 17, 16. I live in number 16. Something moved behind me. The flashlight shook as a figure stepped out from the shadows, tall, wearing a worker's uniform, face blank. "Didn't I tell you not to come after dark?" I dropped the flashlight and bolted up the stairs. The front door slammed behind me with a force that rattled the windows. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station a mile away. When I returned with police, the house was empty. The photographs, the jars, even the chair, gone. The basement was spotless, freshly painted. They told me it must have been squatters or a prank. But 2 days later, on Halloween night, a plain white envelope was slipped under my door. Inside was a photo, grainy, taken through my bedroom window, of me sleeping. In the corner, scrawled in red ink, were the same numbers, 17, 16. I moved out the next morning. House 17 is still listed for rent. Every October, a new tenant moves in. Every November, it's empty again. I didn't usually go to Halloween parties. I'm more the type to watch horror movies alone, eat candy, and laugh at the overly spooky decorations on my street. But my friend Claire insisted. "It's October 31st, you have to come," she said. "Just one night, and it's in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing weird, I promise." Her house was in a small town about 20 minutes from mine. When I arrived around 8 p.m., the place was already buzzing. A few kids passed out candy in the front yard. Inside there were carved pumpkins, fake cobwebs, a fog machine pumping out thick, low clouds that hugged the floor, and a playlist of classic Halloween music. The crowd was small, maybe 20 people, and everyone knew each other, or at least Claire did. I didn't notice him at first. He showed up an hour after me, tall, thin, wearing an old vampire costume, the kind with a velvet cape and plastic fangs. But there was something off. His hair was oddly greasy, and the mask he wore under the cape's collar didn't quite hide his face. He didn't introduce himself. He just hovered near the snack table. "Do you know him?" I asked Claire. "No," she said. "I didn't see him come in. Maybe a friend of someone else?" I shrugged it off. Halloween is weird. People show up uninvited sometimes. At first, the night was normal. Music, drinks, laughter. But I started noticing things. He didn't talk to anyone, didn't laugh, didn't dance, just watched. And the more I noticed him, the more I realized he always positioned himself so he could see me. Across the room, across the yard when people stepped outside. I told myself I was being paranoid. Around 10 p.m., Claire suggested we play a scary story game. Everyone took turns telling short, spooky tales. When it came to me, I told a story about my last Halloween, a harmless story about lights flickering and someone knocking on my door with no one there. I looked up, and he was leaning forward slightly, eyes focused, unblinking. It was unsettling, but I forced myself to relax. Maybe he was just into horror. Then the first small thing happened. We went outside for the fire pit. Someone roasted marshmallows, a couple of people told jokes, and I noticed that he had disappeared. For a moment, I thought maybe he went to the bathroom or was helping Claire inside. But then I saw him, standing across the street, staring at the house through the fog. I squinted. That's a long street. No one should be there without being noticed. "Hey," I called. "You okay?" He didn't respond. He just turned his head slowly, watching us. I nudged Claire. "Did you see him?" She shook her head. "See who?" I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Maybe the fog and the shadows were playing tricks. We went back inside. He had returned, standing by the hallway, still silent, still watching. Around 11 p.m., people started pairing up for the costume contest. I stayed near the kitchen, sipping soda. That's when I noticed something on my phone, a picture notification. I hadn't taken a photo. I opened it. It was a photo of me standing by the fire pit, taken from outside the window. I froze. Claire?" I whispered. She frowned. "What is it?" I showed her. She went pale. I don't know who would." I glanced around. The vampire costume. Gone. No one else seemed to notice. Music still played. People laughed. I checked the doors. Locked. Windows all shut. We tried to shrug it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling. He was here, somehow. Watching. Waiting. About 30 minutes later, someone screamed. We ran into the living room. A small group of kids had been playing outside near the front yard, and one of them swore they saw a man in a cape standing near the pumpkin patch. They insisted he had glowing eyes under the mask. I swallowed hard. I looked at Claire. "We should call the cops," I said. "No," she whispered. "It's just some idiot messing around." I wanted to believe her. But then I heard it. A slow, deliberate tapping from the back door. Not the usual knocking. Like fingernails. Someone was trying to get in. The lights flickered. Music skipped. And for the first time, I realized the front door was wide open. I ran to it. No one there. Just fog creeping up the street, curling around the trees. But then, a shadow moving across the yard. Fast. "Get everyone inside!" I shouted. People rushed to the doors and windows. Claire locked them. I checked the back. Nothing. I told myself I imagined it. Then the power went out completely. The house went black. The fog machine, the candles, everything. Gone. Only the dim moonlight outside. And then I heard it. Breathing. Behind me. I spun around. No one. I ran to the kitchen to grab my phone, but it was dead. Not just the service. It was as if someone had cut the battery. We huddled together in the living room. The party turned chaotic. People were yelling, calling names, trying to find exits. And then I saw him. The vampire. Standing at the top of the stairs. Not moving, not speaking, just staring. I wanted to run, but my legs froze. Then he moved. Slowly. One step, then another. My heart raced. "Who are you?" I shouted. No response. He reached into his cape and pulled out a phone. It wasn't mine, not Claire's. It was my phone. He tossed it at me. I caught it. The screen lit up. Dozens of pictures. Each one was of people at the party. Each one was taken through a window, a slightly different angle. And at the end, the final photo. Me. In the living room. Taken from inside the wall. Before I could react, he turned and vanished into the fog outside. We called the police immediately. They searched the neighborhood. No sign of anyone. No costume. Nothing. The photos? All gone from my phone. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The power back, fog gone, decorations still in place. People laughed nervously about a Halloween prank gone too far. I never saw him again. Except every year, the week before Halloween, I get a notification on my phone. A photo. A single image of me somewhere. Taken from somewhere I shouldn't be seen. And no message. Just the picture. I've moved 3 times since that night. The photos keep coming. Every October. Without fail. And now, every time I lock my doors, I check the windows. Because I know he's still out there. Watching. Waiting. I've always liked running in the mornings. My route was simple, a 5-mile loop around the outskirts of my town, through the woods behind my house and back to the main street. October made it perfect. The leaves were dry, the air crisp, and the fog would settle low, curling around the trees like it was alive. That morning, I left around 6:30 a.m., as usual. It was quiet, too quiet. The usual birds and squirrels weren't around. I told myself it was just the weather. I reached the far end of the trail, the narrow part where trees crowd in on both sides. I slowed my pace because the path was slick with wet leaves. That's when I saw him. A man, standing completely still on the trail ahead, maybe 30 yards away. I froze. He wasn't jogging or walking, just standing. His face was hidden under a hood. "Morning," I said, forcing it to sound casual. He didn't move, didn't answer. I tried to run past him. He didn't step aside. I tried again, a little faster, and that's when I noticed his hands. One was holding a long, thin object wrapped in a dark cloth. It was hard to tell, but I knew enough to panic. I took a sharp turn into a side trail I never used, hoping to loop back. My phone was in my pocket. I tried calling my wife. No signal. Typical for the middle of the woods. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, following me. I ran, my lungs burned, my shoes slipped on the wet leaves. I dared a glance behind me. He was there, not running, just moving fast enough to keep up, silent except for the occasional crunch of leaves under his feet. I tried to hide behind a fallen tree. My heart pounded so hard I thought he'd hear it. For a moment it was quiet. I thought maybe I lost him. Then I heard my name, whispered, "Jeremy." My blood ran cold. Nobody in town knows I run here alone. How did he know my name? I bolted again, scrambling up the trail toward the road. The fog was thicker now, sticking to my clothes and hair. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I yanked it out. A text. "I see you." No number, no contact info, just those 2 words. I broke through the last line of trees and ran onto the street. My car was parked where I always left it. I jumped in, locked the doors, and started it. I looked in the rearview mirror. The trail was empty. I convinced myself I was imagining things. Stress, fatigue, my imagination. That night, I locked all the doors, checked the windows, and tried to sleep. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another message. "You can't hide." I didn't answer. I shut it off. The next morning, I went to the woods again. I had to know. Maybe the whole thing was some prank. The trail was empty. No footprints except my own. Nothing wrapped in cloth. Just leaves and fog. I thought I was safe. A week later, my daughter's school bus dropped her off. She ran up to me, backpack bouncing. In her hand, a crumpled piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a photo. The photo. Me. On the trail. From behind. Taken that morning. Taken when I thought I was alone. I looked up at the trees, the woods, and I realized the sound I had ignored that first day. Faint breathing, maybe, just beyond the fog. I don't run anymore. I don't go into the woods, and I keep my doors locked. But sometimes, late at night, my phone vibrates with a new message. "You ran the wrong way." I didn't plan to go camping that weekend. My friends, Alex and Sarah, convinced me to join them in the woods near Lake Monroe, about an hour from town. They had found an old cabin listed on a local rental site, rustic, cheap, perfect for a last-minute October getaway. I should have listened to my gut. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The sun was already dipping behind the hills, leaving long shadows stretching across the forest floor. The cabin was small, wooden, with peeling paint and a faded porch swing that creaked in the wind. The inside smelled of old wood and damp. Cobwebs hung in corners. It looked abandoned for years. "Cozy, right?" Alex said, dropping his bag on the floor. Sarah laughed. "I love it. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just us in the woods." I nodded, trying to convince myself I'd enjoy it. That night, we had a small fire outside, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. The air was crisp, fog starting to roll in from the lake. I didn't notice it at first, but every few minutes I thought I saw shadows moving between the trees. Nothing specific, just flashes of dark. We went inside around 10 p.m. The cabin had 1 bedroom with a double bed, a small bathroom, and a loft that we used for storage. Alex and Sarah took the bed. I set up my sleeping bag on the floor. Around midnight, I woke to a noise, faint scratching at the front door. I froze. Alex and Sarah were asleep. The wind rattled the windows. But this was different. The scratching was deliberate, like nails on wood. I whispered to myself, "It's probably a branch." Then came a voice, a low, hoarse whisper, "Let me in." I bolted upright. The door was locked. I flicked on the cabin light. Nothing. I shook Alex. "Did you hear that?" He mumbled in his sleep. Sarah groaned. I didn't want to wake them further, so I convinced myself I'd imagined it. I stayed awake, flashlight in hand, staring at the door. Around 2 a.m., the scratching returned, louder this time. Then came a thud. Someone was trying to open the door. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The battery indicator blinked red. I didn't dare look outside. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. The back door. It had a heavy wooden latch, but it was slightly open. I slammed it shut, bolted it, checked every window. All secure. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Every creak of the cabin sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind like breathing. By morning, I convinced myself nothing happened. The sun was up, the fog burned off, and the woods looked calm. Alex and Sarah joked about the haunted cabin story, but I didn't laugh. We spent the day hiking, trying to shake off the fear from the night. But even then, I couldn't stop noticing things. Footprints near the back door, wet and fresh, but too small for either of them. That night, I stayed awake until they fell asleep again. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it. The latch on the back door click. I froze. Then a shadow moved past the window. I whispered Alex and Sarah's names. No response. I crept to the door, listening. The shadow paused. I flipped on my flashlight. Nothing. I went back to the bedroom, heart pounding. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I was ready to leave. Sarah and Alex wanted one last hike. I reluctantly agreed, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. We hiked for about an hour before stopping to rest near a small clearing. I bent down to tie my shoe, and that's when I saw it, a figure standing at the tree line, a man, tall, dressed in dark clothing, hood over his head, not moving, just watching. I nudged Alex. "Do you see him?" Alex shrugged. "See who?" I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was someone else hiking, but the figure didn't move, didn't even blink. We finished the hike, but I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. The figure never appeared closer, but somehow I always felt it watching. That night, back at the cabin, I slept with the flashlight in my hand. Around 12:45 a.m., I woke to a knock, slow, deliberate, at the back door. I froze. Then I heard a voice. Familiar, low. "You left the latch open." My blood ran cold. I didn't respond. I didn't move. The knocking continued, growing louder. Then came a whisper. "I'm in the cabin." I didn't believe it. I had checked everything. I stayed under the covers, trying to convince myself it was a nightmare. Around 1:15 a.m., I heard a soft, deliberate step outside my bedroom window. I peeked out. Nothing. Then my phone vibrated on the floor. A text. "You shouldn't have come back." Alex and Sarah didn't hear it. I wanted to shout, but my voice caught in my throat. Suddenly the bedroom door creaked, slowly. Then the handle rattled. I bolted out the window, jumped into the foggy yard, barefoot, freezing, adrenaline pushing me forward. I didn't look back. I ran through the woods, down the trail, straight to my car parked at the edge of the lake road. I drove back into town without a word. Alex and Sarah followed later, confused and angry, but I didn't explain. I went home and changed the locks on my doors. I called the rental company. The cabin was no longer listed. Locals told me the property had been abandoned for years, and no one was supposed to rent it. Weeks later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small wooden block, just a block. I flipped it over. Etched into the side, almost carved, were the words, "Next time, don't leave the latch open." I never camped again, and I never rented anything in the woods. Some nights, I still hear faint scratching on my door. I don't know if he's watching, or if it's just in my head. But I know one thing. I'll never go back to that cabin. I moved into my first apartment last September. It was nothing special. A small one-bedroom on the second floor of a 3-story building in a quiet part of town. Rent was cheap, location was decent, and I had a view of the parking lot and the little patch of trees behind the building. Everything seemed normal at first. The neighbors were friendly, a few waved hello, and the building felt safe. That changed in October. It started with noises, footsteps above me, not just the normal creaks of an old floor, but heavy, deliberate steps, pacing, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes in the morning. I tried knocking on the ceiling, shaking my head, trying to convince myself it was a landlord repair issue. Then the scratching started. Faint at first. I'd wake up to soft tapping on my ceiling, like fingernails dragging lightly across the floorboards. I assumed a pet, maybe someone moving furniture. Nothing I could prove. One night, around 2 a.m., I was watching TV when I heard a loud thump. My apartment shook slightly, then a soft chuckle. I froze. It was a laugh. Low, quiet, deliberate. It came from above. I grabbed my phone and called the building manager. She said the apartment above me was empty. No tenant. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next few days, I noticed more strange things. My keys weren't where I left them. My front door would be slightly ajar in the mornings, even though I locked it. I double-checked. Nothing else missing. One night, I left a small camera facing my ceiling, hoping to catch a sign of what was happening. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. There was nothing unusual until 1:47 a.m. The camera caught a shadow sliding along the ceiling, moving unnaturally fast, like someone crawling upside down. It stopped directly above me for what felt like a full minute, then disappeared. I showed the footage to a friend. He laughed nervously, saying it was probably just a trick of the camera or my imagination. I didn't laugh. The following week, I started hearing whispers, faint at first, almost like background noise. Then, my name, whispered over and over, soft but unmistakable. Michael. Michael. I called the police. They told me there were no signs of forced entry, no one living above me, and no unusual activity. But I knew what I heard. October 28th, I came home from work later than usual. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. My apartment smelled of bleach and something metallic. The TV was on, volume low. My laptop was open, a single text message on the screen. "I'm closer than you think." I backed away, checked the windows, locked the door, tried to rationalize. Maybe a stalker, maybe someone playing an elaborate prank. I called the police again. They suggested security cameras for the hallway. I couldn't wait. That night, I barely slept. Around 1:30 a.m., I was awakened by movement above me. Slow, deliberate steps pacing back and forth. The whispering started again. I grabbed a baseball bat from my closet. For the next 30 minutes, I listened as the footsteps moved around the ceiling. Then, silence. I crept to my door and opened it slightly. The hallway was dark, empty. No footsteps, no shadows. I was just about to go back to my room when I noticed it. The door to the empty apartment above me was slightly open. The building manager had assured me it was locked. I froze. Slowly, the door creaked wider, and then I saw it. A pair of eyes, just above the threshold, staring straight at me, unblinking, cold. I slammed my door, locked it, and called the police one more time. They arrived minutes later, searched the building. The apartment above, empty, clean, not a single sign that anyone had been inside. I moved out the next morning. I couldn't stay. 2 weeks later, I received a letter, no return address. Inside was a small note typed, "I liked our time together. I'll visit again soon." I still live in a different apartment now, far from that building. I don't look up when I hear footsteps. I don't listen for whispers. But sometimes, late at night, I hear faint tapping. Not above, not below, just somewhere, nearby. And I know I'm not alone. Work in a small town as a night shift worker at a local grocery store. I don't usually have weird experiences. The shifts are quiet, mostly stocking and cleaning. But last October changed that. It started around 11:30 p.m., just before the delivery truck was scheduled to arrive. I was walking through the back room, organizing boxes, when I heard a knock at the side door. I assumed it was the delivery driver. The store gets small late-night deliveries sometimes. I opened the door and found a man standing there, tall, thin, wearing a dark hoodie and a mask covering the lower half of his face. "Delivery," he said, holding a clipboard and a small package. "Wait, it's not scheduled yet," I said, frowning. He shrugged. Might be early. I took the box and signed the clipboard. He nodded, turned, and left. I didn't think much of it until the truck actually arrived 20 minutes later. I noticed the same man get out and stand by the truck, watching. I mentioned it to my coworker, Mike, but he laughed it off. Probably just some weirdo, he said. We went back to work. Around 12:30 a.m., I started noticing things. Boxes in the stockroom were slightly moved. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged, but things weren't where I left them. I tried to ignore it, but by 1 a.m., I heard footsteps in the empty store. Heavy, deliberate, not like mine, not like Mike's. I went to check the back room. Empty. The door to the delivery area was open, the same area the man had been earlier. I locked it and went back to my aisle, but the unease didn't leave. Around 2 a.m., Mike went to the restroom. The footsteps started again, louder this time, like someone pacing, waiting. I called out, "Mike, you okay?" No response. I grabbed the store flashlight and went to the back. The delivery area was empty again, but the small package the man had delivered earlier was gone. Then the intercom clicked on. A voice whispered, faint, distorted, "Did you check the package?" I froze. I ran to the front of the store. Mike was gone. I called 911. They said they were sending someone, but the town is small, and the nearest patrol was 20 minutes away. I barricaded myself in the office, flashlight and phone in hand, trying to calm down. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard it, soft tapping at the office door, slowly, deliberate, like someone testing the lock. "Mike," I whispered. Nothing. Then a voice, my name, low, calm. "Jeremy." I jumped. That's not my name. I tried to call 911 again, but the line was dead. The lights flickered. Then silence. Around 3 a.m., the office door handle rattled violently. I backed into the corner, heart racing. The door creaked open slowly, but the shadow of a figure didn't appear in the doorway. Instead, I heard footsteps move across the office, soft but deliberate. I couldn't see anyone. I bolted through the back door into the parking lot, flashlight swinging. The truck was gone. The man, gone. I ran to my car, started the engine, and drove into town. Police met me halfway. They searched the store, the back room, the delivery area. Nothing. No truck, no man, no package. When they asked what happened, I tried to explain. They were sympathetic but skeptical. "Maybe stress," one said. "Late night shift paranoia." I didn't believe it. 2 nights later, I was off work. I got a notification on my phone, unknown number. A photo. It was the store, empty. But in the aisle where I had barricaded myself in the office, I could see something small, dark, on the floor. I zoomed in. It was the small package, and inside it, a note. "Next time, answer the knock." I never worked that shift again. I moved out of town shortly after, but even now, almost a year later, I check my door when I hear a knock. I never answer, because I know he's still out there, waiting, watching,